Hello, GHILLIE viewers. Now this video might be a little different, and that's because I'm going to try to explain to you guys all the aspects of the ghillie suit and how I use them. So first, I'd like to start off with the camouflage I use. Now, the camouflage I tend to use would be this green, or let's get a better pencil. Okay, that'll work. So what I tend to use is this green, brown, tan, M81 camouflage. Now, I tend to find that it works in almost all the seasons of my environment. I'd recommend picking a camouflage that will work well seasonally for those of you who are working on building your own ghillie suit. And, as you can see in these two environment pictures, there's mostly greens going on here, and tans and browns mixed in to the environment around it. And I just find that M81 seems to work the best with that camo. Now you also want to consider your area, your environment. Now you can see in these two pictures here, they are both the same environment but in different seasons. So here we have a more of a October, late October kind of season right here. Right here we have closer to August or early October here. And you can see a bunch of these woody shrubs are still alive. And I find the woody shrubs to be nice as they last longer in your suit. That along with the evergreen trees or the pine trees will also last quite long in your suit. Grass such as this will not last as long, it will wilt faster in about 2 hours or so. So if I were hiding anywhere, I would just keep that in mind, keep considerate of how long it takes for your plants to start wilting, because that will set you apart from your environment. So when in considering your area, you want to consider the vegetation around you. So as you can see in photo number 1, there is a bunch of grass here along the trail, and it's all around kneeling height. So if I were to kneel in it, I'd be completely covered, and that's something you want to consider. So I wouldn't want to go and get needles from this tree here and cover my suit all in pine needles, because there's not a lot of the pine trees around, and they're not the most prominent aspect. And the most prominent aspect is going to be this grass here, this dead and dying grass. So what I've done is, on my suit, I have a top half suit here. So this suit only covers my top half, and on this suit I have all the grass, and I don't have anything on my legs besides my camo pants. And the reasoning for that is, since I'm going to be kneeling in the vegetation here, I won't need this bottom layer, so those are not added in this situation. But this top layer is all that I'll need to be able to crouch in this grass here and do my ambush or whatever else I'm trying to do. Now you can see in photo number 2 here, same concept. I have these wooded bushes here, due to the fact that they're more plentiful in the environment behind me. And I once again do not have this bottom half because I will be moving around a lot, or I was moving around a lot in this situation. And I just didn't find it necessary due to the height of the vegetation. Now, if you're in an environment such as this photo right here, we'll label it photo number 3. In photo number 3, you can see the trees are a lot more spaced apart here, and there's a lot more low-level grass and things like that. Not a lot of kneeling height grass. For this, I'd recommend something like this suit here, and this suit is a full suit, so this is head to toe coverage here, and you can see everything is covered. So if he was in an area such as this would allow him to lay down and take position without observation noticing him from above or any angles behind, due to him having that full coverage on his suit. Now you could be in this environment with this suit, it would work fine, but you would be risking a higher chance of observation of people seeing you. As you can see in this environment here, on picture number 4, you can see there's a lot more kneeling height vegetation. So this will allow for you to use that top half suit and crouch down in the shrubs. You could even take some stuff from the trees here and use them to your advantage in this environment, as that's mostly what this environment is comprised of. Once again, you want to keep a good eye on your environment, on all the aspects of your environment, and also the change in your environment. So I wouldn't want to put just all these white flowers in my suit if I'm not going to stay in this position exactly for a long period of time. Say if I have to move down the hill, I have to move this way, those white flowers are going to start standing out because they're in a different original environment. So just keep that in mind. The most common plants in your environment, which you're going to be hiding in the most, which you're going to be using the most. Also, you need to consider your shape. You need to consider everything you're carrying, your shadows, your silhouettes, and maybe even your smell. So let's take this photo for an example, photo number 1 here. So you can see how on a normal figure, you can see the very obvious head and shoulders here. And you can also see this V here, which kind of gives him away as an individual. Now you can see on the suit here how you're kind of losing that head and shoulders appearance, and you're kind of losing these major V's here, these major contrasting shapes. This will help you just blend into the environment a little better. You can see here, I have the V here due to not having any ghillie pants. You can see the head shape is being disrupted by the hood in both these images here. And what you also might be able to see is that there's some shadow underneath my brim here. So this hat I'm using in these 2 pictures is a long brim hat. The brim is not cut down, so that will increase the shadow. So I would recommend having a hat, a boonie with the brim cut down as to where you can get more light on your face, and then applying the camo face paint in order to disrupt your face. Now, as for shine, I don't have a lot of shiny things on me in particular in this picture or this picture, but something you might be able to see here are the boots here. You can see the little glistening of those buttons on the boot which might be able to give me away. And along with that, there's some little red tags and this little white wrapping right here, which all might give you away. So there's just some things to consider about your positioning and things like that. You can see here that the netting I use is glued on, but I went over and spray painted over the glue, so it reduces that shimmer. Now, as for smell, if you're a hunter, I'd recommend not using spray paint on your suit because it's easy to pick up by animals. Humans not as much. If you're using it for airsoft, something like that, go ahead, you can use spray paint all you want to reduce the shine on particular objects, to increase your camo on clothing and watches and accessories and such. But I don't recommend doing it if you're hunting. If you're hunting, I'd try to keep it as natural smelling as possible. All the burlap that is used on the suit is a natural fiber, so that'll be inconspicuous to the animals, and the dye doesn't have much of an effect at all. If you want to know the certain dyes I use, and as well as the glue, I personally use shoe goo as my go-to glue for the suits, and for the dye, I prefer RIT dye as the main dye that I use. These colors are achieved, I believe I just use apple green dye. I don't have an exact combination for this color green. I just kind of eyeball it and estimate, and it turned out with this green, which I really liked, so I just decided to roll with it. I do have some general tips though for mixing the colors. If you're putting in green, let's get a, so if you're putting in green, well, that's a terrible brush. So if you're putting in green, you can add in a little bit of yellow to make that green brighter if you really need to. Or you can add in some browns and get like a more dark forestry green if you throw in some brown into it. But just like that. If you're going to use black, use a very small amount, because black is a very strong dye. It will mute colors really quick. As for the suit, use a lighter base because it's easier to make light things dark than to make dark things light. So keep that in mind for your suit. Using a camo base is also very nice. So if you're standing up from your position, you have the camouflage to be able to conceal you for just a little bit longer. So another thing to consider is I have a mix of colors in my suit as well. I try matching the colors of my suit to the environment. So you can see there's a lot of greens, some browns in there, depending on your environment. You might even have only tan if you're in a lot of dead grass and such and such. But I recommend matching the colors to your suit. You don't want to rely on this material because this material is a filler for the negative space between all of your vegetation. For your vegetation, you want a 30 to 70% ratio, and that 70% being your natural vegetation. Now, what else to keep in mind? Your environment. Now there's a lot of hills, things like that. You can use those to conceal your movement through the environment. So let's say I'll draw a little topography here. There's a hill here, a little valley here, pretty spaced. We got another hill here, just going up. and it's kind of spaced here. And let's say we have the enemies here on top of the hill here, and they're observing this direction. What you can do is use this terrain to your advantage. Now, going through this valley is going to be very slow if you're trying not to get spotted the entire time. Let's say there's not a lot of vegetation, you know, it kind of looks like this. It's possible, but it's going to be very slow. So what I recommend is using this natural terrain feature, this topography here, going around that, and then performing your ambush, because you'll go a lot faster being behind cover, being able to walk fully straight up, fully standing, instead of having to crawl yourself through the valley towards your target. So keep that in mind about your terrain considerations with your movement, how long it's going to take you, how much food and water do you have, how much energy do you want to spend. Things like that are all nice things to consider. So now you might be wondering, how do I veg my ghillie suit? So you can see here I'm taking pine boughs from my surrounding environment. As from what I've seen in this environment that I'm currently in, there's a lot of pine trees, a lot of low-level pine trees, being able to crouch in them. So I thought it'd be perfect just to throw a bunch of pine boughs into my hat. So you can see here, I got the shears. Shears are an essential part of the kit, of course. And as you can see, I'm just going ahead, throwing in the pine boughs. I like to weave the stems of the pine boughs through the netting itself. You can also add on rubber bands to your netting. You can put elastic cord on your netting, and you can put paracord on the netting. You might be able to tell on my hat there is paracord on there that I usually use for grass and things like that. But for the woody stemmed objects, things like that, I usually like to just weave it straight through the netting. Now, I find that the most important way to learn your vegetation is just going out there, trying over and over, getting your friends to go out there and try to find you, hide and seek, you know, and just getting a feel for what's really natural and what's not, getting a feel for your environment, what you need. I've found that through the whole time I was using my ghillie suit, you know, using my gear with it, alongside it, just being out there, being in the wilderness, doing it over and over is what taught me how to do it the best. So you can see here, I'm focusing in, just weaving in those pine boughs, and the woody stems kind of stand out the pine boughs on their own, so you don't really need to do much work in that department. If you want your grass to stand up, I'd put it towards the side of the hat, so the pressure of your head kind of keeps it upright. But as you can see, that burlap filling in the negative space, that vegetation on top. So here is me and my finished hat. This is just me testing it out for the camera, trying to get over that fallen tree there. So you can see the camouflage working in, you can see the hat, all the pine boughs on it. You can see once I crouch down into this vegetation, it becomes very difficult to see me, especially with the layers of pine boughs in front of me. That's another thing you want to consider, the layers of camo you have available to you. But, so there I am in the pine boughs with the vegged up hat. And now I'm going to start on the suit. So here you can see me getting into position here, crouched down in the trees. The rifle has vegetation, the hat has vegetation, my bag piece has vegetation. Keeping sure there's a lot of vegetation on the head and shoulders area, that's the most noticeable spot. You can also see the vegetation on the gun, And you can also see on the scope there, I have some tape turning it into a rectangle that just gets rid of the unnatural circle shape of the scope itself. It kind of gives it a more natural look, and also decreases the glimmer that it gives off. So, as you can see, fully concealed, painted rifle, painted face. There it is, folks. Well, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I know I didn't get to every single detail in this video. If you guys want to have an episode about every little thing, an episode about movement, an episode about the weapon system, an episode about my kit, an episode just about construction itself, I'd be more than happy to create a series on these ghillie suits, because I just couldn't get to everything in this video alone. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you learned something new. If not, let me know down in the comments what things I may have missed, what things you want to learn more about. I will try my best to answer your questions in the comments down below. Expect more ghillie videos following this one, just about specific details, things like that. Materials will be down in the description. Thank you.